Like, do you think that 100 Thieves truly are the best team now that they've taken down EG, or do you still feel firmly that Evil Geniuses will take it home? And Broxah, I swear to God, if TL comes out of your mouth. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Recall, a bi-weekly competitive global League of Legends show. I know it's a mouthful every single time. Basically, we talk about the most important matches that are happening in the competitive League of Legends scene. I'm still your host for Usk, and I'm still joined by the incredible, lovely, and eloquent Medic and Broxah. How are you guys?
After you, Broxah. Go on, lead off, man. I'm doing nothing at the moment, so you have a much more interesting story to tell.
I'm doing great. I'm about to travel to the LEC, gonna be casting for the first time, show what I've learned from the two of you, actually, throughout the years. So hopefully that's gonna be great.
You're going to smash it. Bwipo, if you guys just missed it, had a fantastic cast this last weekend on LCS. And Broxah, I know that you're going to do excellent. So the LEC is very lucky to have you, and good luck, but you don't need it. Speaking of LEC, we got to do the check-in, because big news. Did you know that this was happening? 4 seeds at Worlds.
I mean, it's big news. I heard rumors about it, obviously, because LCL weren't able to compete, but whenever I see EU having 4 seeds at Worlds, all I can think about is how bad the tournament structure is in the LEC. Like, it's not bad when you look at it in terms of, like, if we had 3 seeds, yeah, it's great. But as soon as you have 4 seeds, like, your third place team can lose in the first round and get a seed at Worlds. And that's just, like it's really frustrating to see. Because all it takes is, like, I don't know, Excel sneak in, are awful in best of 5s, and then just lose all of their best of 5s, but are still going to be representing us at Worlds. And that's not, like, I'm not trying to pick on Excel, it's just they're the only team we haven't seen, like, of the top 4, top 5 internationally. So, yeah, it's really good. Obviously, it'd be great to watch another EU team get knocked out of play-ins, so we can officially be the team that's had it happen twice. The regions have it happen twice instead of just the region that's had it happen once. But overall, like, I think it's just, I don't expect much from our 4th seed.
So I have a question, because I was trying to find this information about how it, I guess, triggered. And I'm curious if anyone can give clarity, not necessarily just Medic, but is it because the LEC is or LCL is unable to attend, that they're then trying to compensate by balancing it? Okay, so that's really interesting, because I was really curious about when this information would go out to teams. I'm going to assume that they've probably had a bit more runway than maybe the general population with the official LoL Esports announcement, because that's typically how news is working through the orgs. But I just think it's a really interesting conversation about, I really feel bad for the LCL. I do think it is a great opportunity, obviously, for a marketing standpoint alone. Going to Worlds and having that much more of a percentage of viewership on your team, on your sponsors, can be incredible, especially for kind of those mid-tier teams that are just on the edge of making it to Worlds but never quite do. That can give them a huge bump. But, you know, it is really unfortunate for some of those teams that were probably balancing their books and were like, you know, playoffs is our goal, probably not going to go for Worlds, and maybe they didn't splurge on a player that could have pushed them to that edge, and then being offered another seed, it's like, ooh, that is really unlucky.
Or Vitality.
I definitely.
Oh no.
Oh, true, actually.
That is really unlucky.
I was about to say, I feel like at this point, there's almost no excuse not to make Worlds, because it seems like we have, like, a relatively top-heavy league in the LEC. Like, the standings, you know, everything can happen standings-wise, but when I look at the standings, I think so many of these teams can actually make it. I think, in my mind, it's only teams like BDS, SK, Astralis, which is the last one that I'm forgetting.
Misfits, maybe?
Misfits, yeah, Misfits, those 4. That don't have the highest chance of making it. Obviously, you never really know. Astralis at Worlds, that would be something. Would love to see it, but I think the other 6 teams actually all should have a fair shot, and now the chances of them getting that spot is actually really high.
So I think it's really fair for us to say that it's, you know, Fnatic, G2 are usually expected to go, even though they're not necessarily the strongest teams in representing of standings. But then it's like Mad Lions, Rogue, Excel, Vitality. So it's kind of like 3 teams that are theoretically fighting to join the big two that usually go from Europe. Is there a kind of a surefire 4 that you think are going that you would put your money on? I know we've constantly been asking like who your 3 were, and it kind of goes back and forth between, oh, Fnatic's not going to make it, and then Fnatic has a good showing. It's like, okay, yeah, Fnatic can make it.
I was about to say, you mentioned the big two. I want to ask Medic a question.
Being less big. I think Broxah and I are like the same mind.
Fnatic gonna make it, Medic? What do you think about Fnatic?
I think
are they
really
gonna come back?
Man. Like they look really bad at the moment. Like they're players, individually great players, right? But they just at the moment there's no cohesion. And their match against XL, it was like watching my solo queue teammates. I had a guy in one of my matches yesterday be like, you guys don't deserve to win, burnt TP flash level 1. And it felt like I was playing as part of Fnatic. Like, it was such a struggle to watch them play. Rough. And like, obviously they can correct things. And obviously, like, I have faith in the coaching staff there to try and bring things back onto a more even keel. But like, that game against XL was really a showing of just like, that there is a lack of synergy in that team. And a lack of cohesion right now that is really causing some problems for them. And I wouldn't have them in my top 4. If they improve things, you know, this week, if they beat Mad, maybe then you put them back in. But right now, I'd be like Mad Lions, Rogue, G2, XL on my top 4. And they're the 4 teams I expect to make it to Worlds.
I would actually agree with that, yeah. I think so as well. I think you never know for sure, and there's a chance that Fnatic and Vitality can be kind of wildcards that magically, you know, start going ham once playoffs come around. But with the way it's looking right now, it feels like the other 4 teams, like, somewhat stable, still having shaky performances here and there, but at least it seems like they have, like, a good team atmosphere and they're actually able to play as a team for the most part, whereas Vitality and Fnatic, who were supposed to be the superstar lineups coming into the league, they just can't play as teams at all. And honestly, for Fnatic, ever since spring, whenever I see them, they just look so done. Like, it looks like they just don't even want to play the game anymore, and it's kind of sad.
And it's weird because they had like week 2, week 3, they looked really good. When Wonder was playing Gragas and absolutely styling on kids, like they looked like an incredibly strong, cohesive roster. And then it just kind of all fell apart after they lost to Misfits in week 4. Like everything just seems to have been on this like downhill trajectory. It's really strange to me.
So if Fnatic is kind of the one that we're really unsure about, is it safe for you guys to say that then it's G2, obviously not in any particular order, G2, Excel, Rogue, and then is it Fnatic or Mad Lions?
I think I'd have Mad Lions at the top. Like,
yeah. I would take Mad as well over both Fnatic and Vitality. Like again, you never know what happens when playoffs come around because those best of thieves or best of fives.
They are best of thieves. Actually, that statement is so correct.
Oh my God.
Papa Smithy sneaking in. He's actually buying the spot of Heretics.
G2 comes in every best of 5, and they're like best of thieves.
Actually true, I guess. No, but you never really know what's gonna happen when those best of thieves come around, right? And you know, maybe magically they're gonna, you know, have a great run like G2 did in spring. I think with the way playoffs started, no one expected G2 to actually win in spring, and then all of a sudden they randomly won 12 games in a row and just stumped everyone. And the same could happen because sometimes you just find something that magically clicks, and I feel like usually if you at least have like strong individually players, then there's always some sort of hope at the very least, even though the chances might not be as high as for some of the other teams.
Speaking of Misfits, since they're one of the names that aren't on that top 4, the rumor is that they are selling their spot. I believe I just saw this morning on Twitter, maybe it was overnight, depending on time zones, Misfits' official announcement of them selling their LEC spot. Team Heretics is being thrown around. I don't know if it's 100% confirmed. Of course, okay. I'm assuming that there's probably a riot or approval process as well. Do we know anything about Team Heretics?
I mean, so they're quite a big Spanish organization, right? Like in terms of follower base, they have like 1 million followers on Twitter. They're led by the guy who used to have the Twitch viewership record. I think his name is Greg or Gerg. I always like miss
I think.
But yeah.
And like, his name is Greg.
Right, it's like Gerg03 or something. And then Werlip.
It's the Gref G. The Gref G.
That's Gref G. I was close, okay?
And
then Werlip B is part of that creation team as well. So like they're a very big Spanish organization. And I think it's an odd one because I think anyone, if you ask them who is going to take the next LEC spot, would have said, well, it's Koi or KC, right? Like one of these two huge organizations is going to join. From the understanding I have is KC couldn't get the money together / didn't want to dilute their own ownership of the organization to get investors in to pay the money. And then Koi, I think, just didn't want to pay 45 million euros for a spot as well, which is like, it's a lot of money. And Heretics historically have been able to throw money at a few things. Apparently they're a little bit like the phase of Europe, according to some people I've heard from. So I'm looking forward to having them in the league. My expectation is that they will be quite try hard, and they'll be trying quite a lot to firstly cultivate the Spanish viewership base, but also cultivate a pretty strong team. Especially Jack Spectra, I think, plays for them at the moment, and he's probably the best LEC rookie playing in the ERLs right now. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if he comes up with them to the major leagues.
There's go Broxah.
No. It's funny for Jack Spectra in particular because he was actually going to join Carmen Corp before they found out that they could get Reckless, right? So he's expected to be one of the new big players. And I think more than anything, I hope they're going to live up to the hype that you just gave them, Medic. Because when BDS bought the spot, I had very high hopes, I had high expectations. And now, when I look at the LEC standings, I get a little bit depressed. I'm not going to lie. Because in my mind, because we have franchising, because there's no promotion and relegation, it's so important that all the organizations that are in the league are like actually, investing, heavily trying to win, trying to push to get to the top. And seeing BDS join the league just to go for a more cheap roster and end up 10th place, it's been a little bit depressing to watch when there's other organizations out there that are actually willing to compete and aim higher.
Do we want to flame franchising? Because we can flame franchising. We can go down that route if you want.
Wait, here's the thing though. I'm ready to go toe to toe. I am pro franchising.
You're pro? Okay.
So yes. I think that especially European viewers, because I understand the association with it because of the Premier League and football culture in general. I get it. If the threat of relegation is there, theoretically, you increase the competitive ceiling because teams are running for their lives to try to stay in. Historically, that has not been what has happened when relegation was there. It was the same old, in the past, you even had people like buying in last-second retirement rosters to hold down the spot in promotion relegation tournaments and then retain the spot and then stay at the bottom. So historically in the League of Legends ecosystem, promotion and relegation didn't necessarily save tier teams from being tier. And then likewise, yes, there is the incredible story of like the Cloud9s that were, grinding up together, and they come in and they make a splash, and losing those storylines does hurt. But ultimately, if we look at League of Legends and the ecosystem of esports and creating jobs, not just jobs for players, jobs for coaches, jobs for analysts, journalists, graphic designers, managers, that only exist within a stabilized ecosystem in franchising. If you have promotion and relegation, suddenly the stability there is much, much scarier, and you lose so many jobs. So for someone who works in esports and is thinking about the holistic ecosystem, not just the competitive integrity of trying to get the tier teams to stop being tier, I would rather have the bottom tier BDS team that is able to support having a staff and employing all of these people and having people have longevity and careers to go into esports than to go, in my opinion, backwards in terms of infrastructure that creates a much more wild west, just so the viewers can be like, man, CLG should have been kicked out of the league years ago. What is this?
So I get that, and I think from a business point of view, logically it makes sense to franchise. I totally agree with you there, Frosk. I worry about where is the point at which you say, okay, we don't need franchising anymore, because ERLs are huge now. Right? ERL viewership eclipses most other esports viewership.
Don't get me wrong. I think Team Heretics really silly to buy into the LEC at that price when they're a Spanish org and the Spanish ERL pops off.
LVP is fucking huge. Right? So just stay with the LVP. Anyway, my point is more like, I think, firstly, you talked about the stories of like a C9. You can add Misfits and G2 into that boat, right? Like two
That's true.
storied organizations in Europe that came up from the bottom. And then alongside that, I think we are getting to a point now, and this is more of a feeling for me. I don't have the actual numbers to back this up, but it feels like we are getting to a point where the teams that will try to just hire retired talent to maintain a position in the league won't actually be able to stay in the league, because ERL talent is so good right now. Like the LFL and the LVP are getting to a level where I think they can quite easily challenge the bottom of the LEC. And there is a gap in skill there just because of like who you're playing against regularly, who you're scrimming against regularly. Like we've always seen that you need to be a very good ERL team to be able to beat an LEC team, even one of the bottom ones. But I think we're moved towards that spot where ERL is a sustainable enough business if your team invests in it and keeps on with it, right? Schalke did it first, all those years ago when they got relegated and went back up. And the top ERL teams can challenge LEC teams regularly. So I would prefer to see a promotion relegation system like we did in the past, because it means that teams do have to invest to stay in the league, and we don't see so many teams that are just riding on the coattails of other teams. However, I do understand from a business point of view, the stability from a franchise league makes a lot of sense.
I'm gonna come in with my playing perspective, and I'm gonna be slightly biased, but I'm gonna just dive in full on the player perspective. So I very much miss relegation and promotion. In fact, the reason that I got a chance to play for Fnatic Academy and why I ended up in the LEC was because promotion and relegation existed. Because what happened in 2016 was that Fnatic, they decided to go for a little investment. Back then, few teams made academy teams because what were you going to do with an extra team? You can't have two Fnatics in the LEC. But they were like, well, we're going to make an academy team and we're going to do it to actually promote another team to the LEC, and when we get the spot, we're just going to sell it off.
Yep.
And that's what they did. They grabbed. Right, I think. I think it got bought by Mysterious Monkeys.
What a name,
but Fnatic,
worst name in the
great name. But yeah, Fnatic, they grabbed like Cly, Kikis, Mr. Rallis, 3 already known veterans, brought in me and Niski as rookies, and they just went for it. Our one goal was to promote to the LEC, and then it actually worked. Now, fortunately for me, I guess, I didn't end up staying on that team for long because I got promoted to the main team, but it actually worked. And it wasn't, all about like having the right contacts in the organizations that are in the league today, or like knowing the right people at the right time. If you had a couple of friends that you could play with, you could even just make your own team as 5 players and you could show up in Challenger Series and the organizations would come to you. So the dynamic back then was completely different, whereas now you as the player have to come to the organization. Now that has changed. And I think, like Medic mentioned, it kept all organizations on their toes. I know one time in North America, Team Liquid was really close to being relegated. And to avoid being relegated, they had to, get in double lift just to save them and bring them back on track. So back then, like when teams were struggling, they couldn't just accept that they were struggling. They couldn't be okay with it. They had to try to find a way to come back, if not to, get to the middle of the standings, then at least to save their spot in the league. And I think now some organizations, they don't necessarily have to care if they're first place, if they're 10th, because it doesn't make a difference like we're seeing right now. I think when they bought the spots, they were like $10-12 million, if I remember correctly. Now they're being sold for 30 plus. Times have changed, and I liked when it felt like the power were in the players' hands for obvious reasons.
That would definitely put power back in the players' hands, because I would just be afraid that it would turn into a bidding war of inflating players' salaries again, because you can no longer take a chance on the unknown talent that you would have to spin to buy to keep these veterans in the league, because you'd be so afraid of losing your investment and falling down, and like you're saying, have to pull in a double lift. I totally get it from like a grassroots perspective. I'm just like, now if teams knew it, they would just abuse the system and they'd be like, I'm stacking 5 veterans every single time. I need to pull in the double lift, which means that I'm just going to be in a bidding war, so I can no longer take a chance on these rookies. Like the idea of franchising was to make our talent grow. And I don't agree that the teams haven't done a great job of it, but I don't think relegation and promotion fixes that. I think this is actually just a management and organization issue. And people think that relegation promotion will fix something when I think it actually just needs to come from the management side, and the fans need to hold them accountable. But unfortunately, there's nothing holding them accountable, and they get to just sit, like you're saying, on their asses.
Yeah, and I think that's really the problem because, when franchising came in, I was like, okay, I've just gone through the experience of being a new player. I know that it can be tricky to, get to talk to all the experienced guys and get to learn. So for me, it was huge being part of Fnatic Academy back then and getting to talk to all the guys on the main team. And the truth is that if it was all done perfectly, I think it would be really big for the aspiring players, for all the new players in the ERLs, and especially for the guys who land on the academy teams. But I just don't think the landscape in that regard has made it any easier for rookies to come into the league. I think the one thing that has made it easier is EU Masters existing, because back then there wasn't any tournament like that for you to, really prove yourself. Now at least they have EU Masters, but that would exist even without franchising.
True. EU Masters, guys, if you haven't watched it, it's an incredible tournament that's going to be coming up. And I've heard a lot of hype, not just from the Spanish and French leagues, but from the NLC, who, again, think that they're going to win it.
Yeah, they're not.
The harsh truth.
Good luck to them. Changing over kind of towards the LCS, we just had a weekend with them. 100 Thieves EG was game of the week. If you guys haven't seen it, maybe mute right now because we'll probably talk about it. Spoilers, 100 Thieves did win off the back of Abedage's Azir play. I believe it was like 7-1-3. How did you guys feel right now? Do you feel like the LCS, do you think that 100 Thieves truly are the best team now that they've taken down EG, or do you still feel firmly that Evil Geniuses will take it home? And Broxah, I swear to God, if TL comes out of your mouth.
Okay, I'm not going to mention TL at all this one time. Please forgive me, Steve.
Sorry, I'll move my mouth and you can just pretend you're like a ventriloquist. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so no, I can't. I was about to say something, but I lost focus right away. No, but okay, I'm not going to mention TL, but I will say that I think I would say EG is still looking like one of the favorites to win the league right now. I think they're looking really dominant. But I think overall, if we look at all the teams in the LCS, we got a pretty interesting split ahead of us. Because for once, it's actually going to hurt to say this, but for once, CLG actually looks like a good team. I thought they were going to be last year. Apparently, they were not. But now, they're looking pretty solid. They're competing. FlyQuest is looking pretty dominant. So we have two of the teams that have often been down at the bottom, actually, climbing to the top of the rankings. And all of a sudden, TSM seems to be hard stuck right at the very, very bottom, struggling for their lives. So I think, this is an area where, I guess, a positive of franchising, that teams can, have more time to find ways to bounce back and show that they got it. So I would say, as of right now, EG my favorite to win. But at the same time, I think any of the top 6 teams could make it. And then there was also a really interesting news coming out. I think it was yesterday, actually, where for some unknown reason, Golden Guardians just bought out River from Dignitas. And while Dignitas is, as of right now, sitting on 10th place, being 1-9, that's really odd to me. Because if you're 1-9 and you let Golden Guardians, who's sitting just a few ranks above you, buy out what is probably your best player, then I really have no idea what you're doing. Because if that's not like waving a white flag and giving up, then I don't know what it is.
I think it's two things. It could be that the player, River, also wanted out of the contract and maybe saw a better opportunity, and Dignitas as an org supported that transfer. Or it could be that Dignitas is selling off some of their most valuable assets before buyouts run out so that they can actually make money on something, and are planning on either hoarding that money to invest into next year or following a Misfits path, especially now seeing that Misfits just sold their spot for $45 million and are also looking at doing the same thing. That would be my guess.
Or TSM were like, hey guys, we don't want to be last. Is there any chance you sell your best player to Golden Guardians?
TSM's like, Dignitas, check PayPal.
please.
Oh my god.
We always explain it that it's kind of like 100 Thieves, EG, TL. They're like in Cloud, like a little bit of Cloud9. Maybe Cloud9's at like the kids' table, but they're like eating at the dining room table. Then at the kids' table, you have like FlyQuest, CLG, and C9. And then underneath the table, you have these monkeys like TSM and Dignitas and Immortals, and they're just, you just see the hand just like reaching around trying to find like crumbs, and one of them is gonna come down with a knife, and then like Immortals, Golden Guardians, Dignitas, and TSM will be like, oh, and it feels like Golden Guardians just got the knife.
But like how? Like I wondered about that possibility as well, by the way, Frosker, them like trying to sell out before the contract expired. His contract doesn't expire until next year, November 2023. So this is purely a like I don't know. We want some money.
But maybe he, because this is something I've seen happen before, where you have a player who's really expensive, but then you're losing, and then maybe they have some investors who are like, nah, but guys, this guy is so expensive, and you're still losing every game. Please get rid of him so we can save some costs. That would be my best guess. But like actually selling your best player in the middle of the season to your opponent. Oh my lord! What's going on?
So pay the cat tax. I did, but then lift the cat.
I lifted her and then she bit me. So Mika, one sec. Mika, come here.
I know that we're supposed to be talking intently about the LCS, but I am also getting a cat soon. Ah, look at that!
This is Mika.
How old is that gremlin?
She's 2 years old. She's very kind. Kiki is the more aggressive one. But the more I live with her, the more I realize she just likes her space, right? Like she's like any of us. If someone came along and grabbed you by the stomach and lifted you up, you'd probably bite them as well. I think that's acceptable. I'm
looking at adopting this.
Oh,
so cute.
Yeah, it is. It's real cute.
Oh,
very.
I actually have to go meet it after this meeting. So let's move on to our next topic, which is the... I know, right? So recently, LoL Esports released an article that said when you move the goalposts this narrow, the top 5 best LCS top laners. Now I'm going to read off the list. I'll start from the bottom. Number 5 is Balls, from former C9 glory. Then coming in is Darshan, Zion Spartan. Then number 4 is Dyrus. Wait, why do we have Darshan T5? It's a tie? They tied Balls and Darshan? Whatever. Then number 4 is Dyrus. They're like top 5 top laners.
We're making a subjective list, guys. Let's put them in a tie. It's the best way to do subjective. Everyone's tied first. Participation trophies all round.
It's not the LCS way unless there's a participation award.
Wow.
Number 3 is Haunter. Number 2 is Someday. And number 1, which I don't think you could give it to anyone else, and if you did, I would be upsetty, is Impact. Now, outside of the tie between Zion Spartan, Darshan, and Balls, do we agree with this list? Do we think that it is inherently missing any players? I do feel, I'm going to be honest, in terms of making a top 5 list for a specific role, this is the easiest one for North America. This is so easy to ship. We actually just talked about a couple of episodes ago, like kind of the top lane, I guess, lore of North America specifically, that they seem to have or seem to be able to carry from the top lane so successfully. And I don't think anyone's going to disagree that there haven't been a lot of, especially recently, great top laners coming over into the LCS and performing very well. But I think when you're looking at lists like this, you have to think about longevity and kind of the history and legacy that they also leave behind, which is why the only one that I'm a little bit curious on is Someday. Not that Someday isn't incredible and also led 100 Thieves to some of their best results, but just the fact that I don't think he has the same longevity to the LCS that some of the other top laners have had.
I can see that. I think he's still been there like 3 years, right? 4 years?
Yeah.
So
had a rough start and then kind of like ramped up into it. Was always a good top laner, but the team wasn't putting out the results to the performance that he was putting out.
Yeah, my question would be, like, does Licorice belong on this list? Because
And that's
he was very
one of the names
good
missing
for a while, and although he didn't carry as hard, he did still have NA's best. Like, he was part of the team that had NA's best result of Worlds ever, right? Semi-finals, they lost to you, I think, Broxah, in 2018.
They sure did. Good times.
just wanted to remind you that one.
Also, the fact that Licorice is like North American, like crafted. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't a diamond that came.
How much does that influence things, right? Like, if you're as an NA resident, do you get 5 extra percentage points over someone else? Because maybe you put Licorice in there and you say, okay, we'll get rid of. But who would you actually get rid of there? Because I don't think you can get rid of Dyrus, Balls, or Hauntzer just because, again, they're NA residents. And Balls has like the iconic pentakill Darius, and Dyrus has the iconic dying under his tower in the top lane. And
when I saw the list, I was actually surprised that Someday was there.
Yeah.
It actually says in the article Someday has been around LCS in 2017, so that's a very, very long time that he's been in the league. But during that time, he's just mostly, been existing there. Like, he won Summer last year. That was his first time actually winning anything on any of the teams there. But otherwise, there hasn't really been anything going on. Hasn't made it to Worlds more than once, I believe. Maybe twice, I'm not sure. While all of the other names have actually achieved a lot during their time in North America. And personally, I would have removed Someday to instead put in Licorice because of what Licorice has achieved and because of just how much he's done during his time on Cloud9. Like, he came in, he won Rookie of the Split, made it to semi-finals at Worlds right away, which is one of North America's greatest achievements ever. And some would probably argue that maybe he didn't look quite as dominant after that year, but he still has achieved more than Someday ever has, so that's why I would value him a little higher.
I can get on board with that. I don't want to undervalue Sunday, though. I think he has done stuff in NA. I can still get on board with putting Licorice above him.
No, he's been a great player. It's just if you look at international achievements, which at this point should mean everything to North America, in my opinion, because that's where they've been struggling for so long. That's someone where Licorice and Impact have had the biggest difference of all.
Yeah, again, the article is citing Emily Rand a lot, and again, I think Emily is fantastic. But I do know that she has a prior history, like she watches a lot of global leagues, and so I think maybe that familiarity with Someday might have tipped the scale there. You have to look through the lens of who is being cited in the article there, and I think maybe that might have bumped him up over someone like Licorice. And I agree with you, Broxah. It's kind of achievements and a little bit of a shorter burst versus just the sheer skill that Someday has had for a long time. So the question I'm supposed to ask you guys is, who would be your top 5 best LCS players of all time? So this is regardless of role. I will bite the bullet first and give you some time to think, maybe throw out some good names. In no particular order. Think about ordering it next. I think you have to have Core JJ, Doublelift, Bjergsen, Impact. Oh, who would be my 5th?
Let's see if you hit the same one as me.
Let me think of just the most iconic. I mean, I think a lot of people would go Dyrus, but I am actually really hesitant to put Dyrus on there. I think they would go Dyrus because he's so iconic. Is it a support? Is it another AD carry? Sneaky, maybe?
So wait, can I just check? We all agree on the first 4, right?
Oh, actually, I would go Jensen.
Yeah, that was okay.
I would go Jensen, Bjergsen, Core JJ, Doublelift. Who's my last one?
Impact.
And Impact, yeah.
Yep, I 100% agree with you. I think Jensen has it there, right?
I almost agree with you because you forgot someone that I think is very important.
Is it Broxah?
It's not Broxah. It's not Broxah. It's close. It's an ex-TL Jungle 86 Smithy. Because
Oh.
Xmithy he won the LCS
He had so
6
many
times.
achievements.
He won
was-
6
He won
times.
6
He was
times.
part of the TL roster that made it to the MSI final. So for me, it's like Bjergsen, Doublelift, Xmithy, and Impact have to be there because all of them have won the LCS between 5 and 8 times and have all played international tournaments for NA so many times. And then I have no idea who I would pick between Jensen and Core. That would probably also be a tie. Like if the LCS tier list can have a tie, that's gonna be my tie too.
Okay, well, let's order. Okay, so can we agree that Xmithy would be 5?
See,
But he's fifth.
I personally wouldn't put Xmithy on because as much as I guess it depends on what your top
He's,
LCS.
I understand that the eye test tells you something very
that's the
different
thing.
about
It's like,
Xmithy,
what
but
is
his
top?
trophy case is huge.
I 100% agree, but like, what are we classing as top then? Because his top is the most skilled players ever in the LCS. I don't think Xmithy gets that spot. I think he was incredibly skilled. I just don't think he was one of the top 5
Won on
most
different
skilled
teams.
ever. I mean,
I think he would be for sure. I think
top 5
Xmithy.
most skilled ever
Just
in the
close your
LCS.
eyes. Just close your eyes and listen to the facts.
I mean, the facts are that, okay, screw it. We'll put Xmithy in. I would go Jensen
At 5.
personally. I think Core JJ has to be in. Firstly, because he is an incredibly skilled support, but secondly, also the impact he's had on NA League. Like the amount of stories I hear about this guy changing how NA League works. He sorted out the Discord server with all the queues before Champions Queue was the thing, right? Like he has such a positive influence on that region that I think leaving him off would be a slight to him as a person.
I think you do Xmithy at 5, Impact at 4. I think you do Doublelift at 3, Core JJ at 2, and Bjergsen at 1.
You would put Core over Doublelift.
I think Core is top 5
That's a
support
spicy one.
in the world, and I don't think Doublelift ever in his career has been top 5 AD carry in the world.
But then,
yeah, I
we
mean,
just say,
I guess
carries
again,
are generally more skilled than supports. Support's an easy role.
Well, Core played both, so I don't know what to tell you.
Core was not a top 5 AD carry, okay? Core was a bottom 5 AD carry.
At some point in the world, Core was a better AD carry than Doublelift and a better support. At some point in the timeline.
But yeah, I mean, I guess again, similar to the other list, it just depends on what you value, right? Because there's like the raw individual skill, there's like the team impact and the achievements, and it's tricky, but it seems like we're somewhat aligned at the very least.
Bjergsen,
no one else is taking
impact, Core, Xmithy.
Wait, how did
begrudgingly. I put double impact then Core, mostly because Core doesn't have as many LCS things as other LCS players. Like Impact
on trophy case, Doublelift wins hands down.
Yeah, so Bjergsen I think is better than Doublelift. Giving him I just think he's a better player and he's still playing, right? And then I think Doublelift comes second. Then Impact, he's got like 4 championships. He's been like
5.
All Pro 9 times or something, right? And then Core JJ, because although he hasn't won as much, I value the contribution he's had to the league. And then I put an Xmithy in because Broxah convinced me and he's a smart man. So
great job. I'm proud. And then we give honorable mention to Jensen.
Yep.
And then
participation award for Jensen. Maybe you'll hit the Zanya hourglass this time.
Wow, that's a rough one. Oh, that's harsh.
Do we give participation to like Sneaky as well then? And
I mean,
Afro?
Sneaky, Meteos, that whole C9 roster. High. Oh, we totally didn't even talk about High.
Yeah, but
Elimination.
I mean, High played like Teemo mid, and that's my memory of the guy. Like he had a great.
But
Teemo mid
did
game
those
once.
guys actually? Did they win like
not
that
enough.
many times?
No.
They won at the beginning when they came in, and they were
But did they win like twice, or did they win like
I
think
2
it
years
was
in a row?
I'm looking
3
up High
times?
once again.
Because the actual rivalry, people think it's CLG versus TSM. I think that the real rivalry of LCS and like the golden era was actually TSM and Cloud9.
So,
And then
I would
TL
agree with
came
that.
in, and I would say TL kind of took over that spot.
they won twice, as far as I can see. 2013 summer, 2014 spring, and then they lost to TSM in 2014 summer. Oh no, this is High. Yeah.
Flame us in the comments. Let us know how much we got this wrong. We appreciate you.
I think
Moving
I'm
on.
gonna be
It was
honest. If people are
flawless.
flaming us in the comments for this take, like of all the takes they could flame us for, they're on the wrong side of this one. If they think our take on the top 5 LCS players is wrong, they haven't watched enough LCS. You
Go
guys are
flame
wrong.
Medic, guys.
Is it me
Let
that's
them
wrong?
know.
No,
Let
the
them know.
children are wrong, as per usual.
Moving over into the LPL. If you guys haven't been keeping up with it, I know you haven't. That's why you're listening to us. Victory 5, we were singing their praises. We were ready to send them off into Worlds. There was going to be big fanfare. They were undefeated. That is no longer the case. They have been overcome. They are now sitting in third. Still, obviously, a very good team, but JDG and Top Esports have kind of risen from the ashes. Even EDG pulling in their new junglers, having some better showings, and it just feels like overall the LPL is finding that sixth gear, heading into playoffs or getting closer into Worlds, and really starting to push forward here.
Yeah, we're so screwed. If an LPL team doesn't win, it's either an LPL team or like T1 winning Worlds this year. Like, honestly,
wait, where's your LEC faith? Your LEC
I have
caster?
None. I have none.
What?
Like,
You don't
you've
believe in your
watched
own
the
region?
LEC box. You're casting the LEC. Like, if you can honestly tell me you think the so we'll go at current standings. Obviously, teams can improve, etc.
No, don't send it back
If
to
you
me.
can honestly
Just take
tell
it.
me
Just
you
take
think
it.
any of our top 4 LEC teams would challenge even the third place team in LPL, then
That's currently Victory 5.
Yeah, V5. You think any of us can challenge V5? Anyone from the LEC?
No, they're gonna get demolished.
Exactly.
But, yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, you got me. You got me. I got outplayed.
I will say, to quote Lyric, one of the casters of the LPL, the ceiling of Victory 5 is winning Worlds. The LPL experts and casters are very confident that this team will bounce back and that it will have, this is their world-winning roster right now. So I think it is fine to respect Victory 5 despite their little oopsies.
The good thing
But
is the
I feel
floor
like
of them
that's-
is like messing up a ton as well. Like, we watched the last 2 losses and they didn't play flawless League of Legends.
Does the LPL
Well, I
really
feel-
ever play flawless League of Legends?
I feel like the beautiful part about LPL is that, like, the 4 teams that make it to Worlds,
All of
they
them are
usually
scary?
all have a chance to win Worlds. There's usually one who like tilts into oblivion and just drops out in groups. But then there's 3 teams that are all so good that it's just a coin flip which of them actually goes beast mode and just takes home the trophy.
Yep.
And that's the really scary part, that there's so many teams that can actually make it and you don't know which one. So you just have to flip a coin and try to avoid that team at all cost.
Can we flip like a 5-sided coin? Because currently I have JDG, Top, V5, EDG, Weibo, maybe Edward Gaming, like and maybe RNG as all like my possible Worlds winners. So any
You
of
know
those
what,
teams,
Medic?
any of those.
We send Excel wins Worlds, we're gonna be fine, don't you worry. They look like the best team in LEC right now, in my opinion. So Excel takes down all of them, it's gonna be easy.
Okay, so moving on to more LPL news. This isn't actually LPL news. This is LDL, which stands for the League of Legends Development League. This is kind of the ERL or secondary academy. It's not quite academy league underneath the LPL. They compete in multiple tournaments. They have their own circuit. It is the talent farm of the LPL, and why they keep sending terrifying players to face us that we've never heard of before they reach the world stage. They have adopted a fearless mode in best of threes. And just to read the tweet, LDL officials will adopt the fearless mode in best of 3. When best of 3 goes to game 2 and 3, all champions picked by your team in the previous games in this series will not be available for picking in the following games, while the opposing team is not restricted by this rule. So basically, if you pick LeBlanc in game number 1, you can no longer pick LeBlanc in game 2 or 3. You get one use on a champion, whereas the other team could be like, they used LeBlanc in game number 1. We now get to have LeBlanc. That is how it works. What do you guys think of this system? I have to say, if I was an analyst or drafting coach for the LDL, I'd be I'd be so bad. This makes your life so much harder.
Well, I definitely can see the drafting side of it, because I can already tell you that often when you're on a team, you spend over an hour talking about drafts for the next day, even though all those drafts look more or less completely identical, but just to make sure you've talked about every scenario. In this case, it creates like 100 different scenarios to think about, and drafting is going to be a complete fiesta. But at the same time, I actually love it, and I think it's a really interesting change, because it forces players and teams to like be super creative, and everyone has to bring so deep champion pools to matches. Like, in my mind, it would actually be fun to take it even a step further, like and see what happens if we go full YOLO mode and make it so that in the best of 5, all champions that have been played in the game, like just in the entire game, can't be played for the rest of the series. Because imagine what the game 5 would be like. It would be absolute madness. It would be so hype, you know. Like we don't get to see the same boring champs over and over. Like that game 5 would be, I don't know, we're gonna see a Mumu versus Udyr jungle or something crazy. It would be so good.
I think the only way to prep for this, like if I'm thinking if I had to do this for a team, I would just make a pool, like a list underneath every single position of what my team could play and then what the counters were and then what it countered. And then you just kind of have to be like, okay, they picked this, we know this counters it, this is it. Like that's the only way you would do it. And you'd have to hope that your composition kind of came out together correctly and like pray on the other side.
And then you have to hope that your composition in game 2 and game 3 isn't hampered too much by the counter that you picked in game 1.
You're like,
right?
shit, we used all the engaged champions. We can't engage.
I mean, I love it. I love the idea. The only other issue I have with it is like, how do you watch that as a viewer? Like, you get to game
not
of
that
the
up
series.
as the team?
Yeah, but as the team, 100%. Right? But in game 5 of a series, and I'm looking at bans, and it's just 20 different champions underneath the 5 bans that they have for that ban. It's like, how on earth am I meant to interpret this? I think it's really cool. I think it's just a little over the top.
If the production value is able to simplify it, so as you're saying that the fans can very easily recognize it, the casters can keep track of it, and the teams also don't have to go into multiple technical pauses because some asshole accidentally locked in a champion that they didn't remember that they previously played. Oh my god, you thought the League of Legends pause league existed before. LDL is going to take this to a completely different level. Ay. Do we think that it should be incorporated into more leagues? Does this do you think that this like completely kills competitive integrity? Like, do you think that there's just no way in any distant future that this could ever be a world's final draft style?
I think in my mind the most realistic would be to do something like what we had in the past, where was it a game 5 of a series that was like blind pick or something? Because I think that was so hype, and we have like the big Faker Rio clip. That clip would never have happened if blind pick wasn't a thing. So I think adding something that can create some extra spice and chaos in the series isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think this change in particular, it can be so chaotic for drafting, like you said. Like imagine being the coach on stage going into game 2, and not only do you have to think about what you're drafting for this game, but then certain champions are locked and can't be picked anymore. It's just a complete mess, right? But the idea of forcing players and teams to have deeper champions pools and bring more champions into the game, I think is really cool, because normally most players have like 4 to 5 champions that they know they're gonna play going into a match. But in this case, 5 champs is not going to be enough. You're going to need to dig in deep and get ready to whip out some of the spicier stuff. And I think for entertainment value and from a viewer point of view, that'll be cool, even though it probably would hurt the game quality a little bit, because people are going to be more uncomfortable on those champs.
Overwatch League did it a little bit. They had like 4 heroes for each tournament or each week that you couldn't play. And it was just like, oh, this week, I don't know, Reinhardt is banned. Reinhardt? How do you pronounce that? And you couldn't play him. So it would like try and mix up the meta a little bit more. I think one thing League does well is patching. Like generally, no, I'm not saying every patch is good. I'm just saying the regularity of it means that we tend not to have too stale of a meta for too long. Like it definitely does happen. And we all remember like the Udyr Hecarim Turbo Chem Tank stale like meta and the Ardent Sensor meta and the funneling meta. But we never have something that really lasts for a year. I'd like to see something like this, maybe not to this degree. And obviously, I think it has to come in next year because you can't really say, oh, Worlds this year will have this new change. No one's ever played on it. Let's do Juggernauts again. But yeah, it'll be fun. And maybe just ban every champion with a letter. Just be like, okay, how many weeks are there in a year? 52. Alphabet has 26 letters. You just cycle through. So every week you change letter and you go A to Z and then you go A to Z again. And at Worlds, we'll be banning like...
Then you'll literally have a discussion on the analyst desk and be like, we are so screwed because it's a week and we can no longer play Azir.
Azir. Ari.
Alistar.
Get rid of him. S-Week. S-Week is the one I want to see because you're getting rid of a lot of champions when you get rid of the S's. That's a wide gap of champs.
Okay, outside of our alphabet soup, moving over into the LCK for our general LCK check-in. Now, recently, the LCK has implemented 3 new policies, which I actually think are very important. Rookie Development Clause, LCK Agent Clarification, and LCK Pre-Contract Policy. Now, one of the things that I fear and know, as I drop a controller, that's broken forever, has been happening with the LCK is especially because it is a farming ground for a lot of international teams to kind of pick apart a lot of these players. Not only do young, impressionable players probably get abused by the LCK system as they do in the LCS, LEC, we all know that contract jail can happen. But when you have so many other people bidding onto it, more protection for younger players, I think, is always going to be a good thing. I don't know if these policies will necessarily sort all of those problems, but I do appreciate that leagues are starting to take more care of and being more thoughtful about how they are constructing the contracts for very young adults.
I'm not sure if that's really the case, because I tried to look into these 3 changes earlier, and they're all very different. But the one that worries me the most is the one related to contracts, the Rookie Development Clause, because as far as I understand it, this clause is mostly good for organizations and not for the rookies, because the way it works is that the teams will have the power to extend player contracts for 2 years as long as they give that player a salary increase and play time during the contract. Which means that if you're an upcoming LCK star, you can get completely screwed by an
Trapped
organization.
in your contract.
And you can get locked in a bad contract for years. And I think that's really tricky, especially in an esport world where careers are often short. Like many pro players, they barely play for more than 2 to 3 years. Obviously, at this point, we have some with longer, but that's how it goes for a lot of people. And yeah, you could just get hard stuck on a bottom team in a bad contract for basically your entire career, regardless of how good you are, in the worst case scenario, if this isn't being done in the right way. So that would be my biggest concern. I think, like a lot of other things, it's something that can work if it's being done really well. But if it's not managed correctly, it could be really problematic for the rookies.
The intention is good, the execution may be nefarious.
And that's always the issue, right?
Yeah.
Like when you have, I think one of the good things is it looks like you have to play 50% of Challenger League games or 25% of LCK games to like qualify for that 2-year contract extension. But still, as Brox is like,
25% of LCK games is nothing.
It's a lot of LCK games, right? Like that was where I was going to go.
But if I was told that I got a player contract for a team, but I couldn't decide my own salary, it just has to be increased, and they only promised me 25% of games, I would never want that deal ever, even if it was for like, okay, maybe if it's for the team that wins Worlds, I would consider it. I would like a Lee Sin skin, thank you very much, but you get the idea.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you, and I think the thing is like, I don't know enough about the complexities of LCK contracts, but I do know like historically there have been a lot of people hired by teams that have never played, right? It's just like, you're just a trainee for us. Like maybe you'll become a player, and this kind of protects them a little bit because it means you can't be locked into one of those longer contracts, and there's a terminate clause for the player if they're not playing enough games. But I totally agree with you. I think like there is a very, very clear way this can be exploited by organizations, and having a bottom LCK team be like, oh guys, yeah, you're just, you're going to play for us. We'll play you for a quarter of the matches. We know you're incredibly good. We know you could go anywhere in the world and be on a top team. But because we have this 2-year contract extension, it doesn't matter to us, right? How do you get out of that? What's the leeway? I will say as well, the agent thing is a little concerning for me, because it says that agents for players have to be certified by the LCK. That always worries me. Whenever it's the organization that controls the situation saying, oh, you have to go with someone that we have certified, there is immediately a conflict of interest in my head. And it's like, well, how can you say that these people aren't working for the LCK's benefit rather than the player's benefit, right? Or they're having, different ways of like working because they know that they are certified.
I think this is a direct response to the fact that there's so many agents that float around the League of Legends ecosystem that frankly have really either like screwed players out of opportunities, have left really bad taste in a lot of orgs' mouths. There's certain agents that orgs just will not deal with, and so if you're a player with this agent, like a used car salesman, comes up to and is like, "Oh, you know, I get you good deals. I got all of this," that you don't even realize that that team that maybe you wanted to play for, that number that maybe you really wanted, you no longer get. So, again, I agree. I think it's directly related to, especially individuals that probably don't have English as a first language being abused by snake oil salesmen as they're trying to sell off these properties into global leagues.
And again, it's good in its purpose, maybe bad in its execution, right? Because if
but
they say,
can be very
exactly,
abused.
Right? If they say, "Oh, we are hiring an outside agency who will certify all of these people," I know Kesper is like, they have their agency qualifications and such, but if it's another step removed, I have more trust in it rather than it being like a direct relationship with the LCK.
I think, like you're saying, it really depends on the execution. But from a player point of view, for my first 4 years as a pro player, I avoided agencies at all costs because agencies' reputations in esports overall are just not the greatest. Unfortunately, at this point, there's more agencies coming in that, you know, are trustworthy and where you know what you're getting. But I had heard stories from so many players, so many teammates about this horrible agency they were having that more or less just scammed them. And I found different ways around it because it was just impossible to find someone that I actually, thought I could trust. So in that sense, creating a sort of certification so players know that if they go to a certified agent, that agent, can actually be trusted and will actually do a good job for them.
Sure.
In theory, can work really well. Because I think in general, it's not a bad idea if they are to provide education and make sure that the people working around the major leagues actually have the required knowledge to do their jobs and actually have good intentions. But these type of things are always so much easier said than done.
Completely. Ultimately, it comes down to that we just want the best for the players themselves, and hopefully, as more of these rules come in, they'll either be used in the correct ways or shine a magnifying glass that abuses can take occurrence in the system, and hopefully we're more aware and hopefully prevent more of those abuses on these players so that they can get the best future possible for themselves. That said, guys, we are going to wrap up this episode of Recall. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Reminder that we will be back in 2 weeks' time. It's a bi-weekly show. I'll still be here as Wilmedic and Broxah. Do you guys have any final farewells?
Goodbye.
Okay, I'll do it. Goodbye.
Everyone smile and wave. That is episode 10 of Recall. Thank you guys so much and hope you have a great weekend.